Hello, you've reached Gloria with Farmstead Talk, and I am here today with Sarah with Better with Thyme Farm, and she is representing her state of West Virginia in this homesteading interview today. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. So if you would, go ahead and share with the audience where they can find you on social media.
Sure. The primary place is Instagram. It's at Better with Thyme, and that's like the herb, Thyme. We also have our website, which is betterwiththyme.farm. We have a YouTube channel, also Better with Thyme, but have not made any videos for about 2 years, so maybe we'll get back to that soon. We'll see.
Okay, so if you would share a little bit about Sarah, where you were born, a little breakdown bio about Sarah.
Sure. I was born in Denver, and I lived there until I was about 8 years old or so. And my family moved to the East Coast where my parents work in the Washington, D.C. area, and kind of, lived in a typical suburban HOA. And then after college, I decided to move to New York City because I had met some friends at college that were from New York City. And then that's where I met my husband. He was born and lived in New York City his whole life prior to moving to West Virginia.
Okay. So share a little bit about your property, where you're living, the community and its population there.
Okay, so interesting. I had to look up the population because I knew we're kind of a small area, but there's under 2,000 people in the town. So, and we're technically not in the incorporated town. We're just outside of Shepherdstown, West Virginia. It's a historic town. It has a university. It's got a lot of really interesting arts and cultural stuff going on. There's a farmer's market almost year round. It's a pretty neat little place.
Nice. So I know you had told me once before that before you moved into the home where you're living now, you were living off grid in hopes of waiting out your time to get to the home where you're living at now. So how was that like? And share a little bit about your experience with that.
Okay, sure. So we had started out in the New York City area, like first learning about trying to get more healthy, and then growing some food, and we kind of outgrew our little urban. Picked up and left when we realized that we had to either get rid of our chickens or not live where we were anymore. So we just bought an RV and this property and came down here, and we spent the first year mostly just observing, trying to see, the patterns of where the sun is, what the weather, when rainfall is, and the slope of the land and all those things. And so we had this RV, and we got a solar generator and some solar trickle chargers. So we had a little bit of electricity, enough to like vacuum once a week and charge our phones, and that was about it. And then we actually collected rainwater from the roof of the RV, and just went for it. So it took quite a while to get, to the point where we actually moved into our house. But it was a really interesting time to kind of really get to know this property intimately when we really didn't have a house to escape to.
And while you were doing that, you said that you started planting your perennials.
We did, yeah. So we kind of, came up with a preliminary site plan. The first year we moved the RV around to several different spots, like where we thought we might like to put a house, and then figure out how to lay things out around that. So we planted fruit trees, we planted sugar maple trees, lots of shrubs, herbs, some perennial vegetables. And we also used the chickens to kind of get started on improving the soil where we knew we were going to be planting things, because we have a lot of clay here. So where they were was really, the growth is significantly better from where they've improved that soil.
That's awesome. Yeah. So share with me about the inspiration of why you wanted to live this lifestyle. You told me that you had read a book, and that was really inspiring for you.
Yeah, it was kind of accidental. So we were kind of living, typical New York City young couple, commuting to Manhattan for work every day. And I've always loved to read. I've read my whole life. And one of my favorite authors was Barbara Kingsolver. And I picked up her most recent book, expecting another fiction story like her other ones, and was surprised to find that it was a nonfiction story of her family leaving the desert, I think it was in Arizona, and moving back to their family farm in Virginia, and trying to get all of their food locally for 1 year. So they would either grow it themselves or get it from people in their community. And it was, I think it was January when I read the book, and we decided, like, let's try this too. Like, realized what was going on with where most of our food was coming from, and wanted to try it out. And so at the time, there were over 50 year-round farmers markets in New York City, so we could go around and get whatever we needed. And we connected with a local farm who delivered grass-fed beef and pastured eggs to the city. I think it was once a month. We started growing herbs in our skylight and composting in our kitchen with worms, and just kind of dove in.
How fun. How fun. What was the name of that book?
Animal Vegetable Miracle.
Okay. So it sounds like a good resource. So what is your growing zone, and what is your garden going to be looking like this year? What are you planting out there?
We are in 6B, and we are in the Shenandoah Valley, close to the Potomac River. The Blue Ridge Mountains are kind of off in the distance, so we sometimes get some real big swings and sometimes late frost. So we're kind of cautious early on, because our first year we lost all of our tomato plants, a whole bunch of things that we had tried because of very late frost. So,
Sure.
So like I said, we focused a lot on perennials, and the other thing that I am trying to work on getting added here is self-seeding annuals, which we had at our previous property, and it was just so much fun to, like, for example, chamomile or borage or calendula, like all these things that are edible flowers that are, really pretty in salads and delicious and nutritious, and then they just pop up wherever they're happy on your property. So I made my list, and I have 165 varieties of seeds that I'm hoping to, I have them on the calendar, so we'll see. That's the goal for this year, to get that all out. And right now we just recently got pigs, and they are finishing clearing where we're going to be planting the garden, so that we don't have to do that work ourselves.
So you said that the chickens were prepping an area for you to start your garden beds.
Mm-hmm.
Will they be in the ground, or will you be utilizing raised beds?
We're going to do a combination. I actually was a little disappointed that we had started in ground originally, because I had not really planted much in the ground prior to this besides trees and shrubs. And the way that the weather is going there, we've had days where we've gotten 4 inches of rain in one day. And so things that are in the ground get really, really wet. So I'm probably going to end up raising some of those things up and moving some of those things that are not really in ideal spots. And then we also like to use kind of like a hugelkultur method, where we bury a lot of rotted wood, and that will help to hold the water and kind of spread out those pulses so that the plants don't get inundated and dried out. It kind of evens things up.
Makes sense. Share about the types of animals you have. I know you have quite the diversity over there. So tell me what you got.
Okay, so we started with our chickens, and we primarily had started with them because the first year we were here, we only had the little bit of rainwater that we collected, and we knew it would be hard to water larger livestock or a whole lot of plants. So we kind of just went with chickens, and we said, let's just get a whole bunch of different breeds, and then we'll pick our top 4, and those will be the ones that we'll focus on. Of course, people joke about like chicken math. That never works. So we still have like 16 breeds or something. But so,
and they're very addicting too.
Yeah.
They're so fun. You always want to just try something else.
Mm-hmm. So we use a combination of pasture pens and portable electric netting, and kind of use that and kind of time it for, do we want something lightly scratched up, or do we want something completely cleared? And some places will give, like we have hay bales that are kind of, the outside is too wet to use for the livestock. So we'll take all that wet stuff and use it to build up an area where we want the chickens to really, scratch in through there and build it up.
Okay. So then what else do you have?
Okay, so the chickens, then we also got ducks, which I actually almost like better than chickens, almost. I love the meat from ducks, and the eggs are really rich. Chickens are funny because different breeds are different, and some of them will be lazy and just eat feed if you let them, whereas ducks really prefer to be out. Like they go all the way to the perimeter foraging in the pasture, and they're in any water that they find. They'll eat mosquito larvae, and last year we actually saw them eating like tons of tadpoles. We had, or maybe it was 2 years ago, there was a year where we were just inundated with rain, and they had so much to eat that year. So the ducks and the chickens kind of complement each other and eat different things. And then
What type of ducks do you have?
we have Welsh Harlequins, which are kind of like a dual purpose breed. They're auto-sexing when they hatch, so then you can separate the drakes to keep for meat and then keep the girls for eggs. And we have the chocolate runner, Indian runner ducks, because they're so cute the way they're like little wine bottles, running around upright. And last year we also added cayugas because they're very large, and they're supposed to help with deterring hawks from landing, because all the ducks will kind of forage in close proximity to each other. So if their big cayugas are there, it is more of a deterrent for hawks.
Okay. So what's your purpose for the ducks? So are you utilizing them for meat and eggs? Are you selling them, or are they basically for personal use for your family right now? Or
we have sold a handful of ducks and eggs for eating. We have not sold any hatching eggs from ducks yet, but mostly for ourselves for eating, and then we sell whatever we have extra.
Okay. What's next?
Okay, so next, the next thing we got was our mini Jersey cow, and we got her after we got well and electric, so that we could make sure that we didn't run out of water for her, because cows can drink quite a bit of water. And we met her when she was only 3 months old. She came from grass-fed. Her whole herd was A2. She's like 5th generation grass-fed, so she's a really healthy cow. The people who raised her were doing a great job.
Can you explain what A2 is?
Yeah, so essentially there's different proteins in the milk, and the A2 is like an older genetic marker for that protein, which is less likely to cause allergy issues.
Okay.
So that is also one of the reasons why we ended up doing what we're doing, was because of food allergies that our children had. And that was actually why we started with chickens too, was our children could not eat eggs from really anywhere, even farmers market eggs, which we ended up tracing back to soy allergy. So our chickens don't eat soy. And
so now your kids don't have the allergies, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
We're hoping the same thing with the dairy. Our cow is still a heifer, so we won't expect our first calf until next year. But we're, fingers crossed that she's not eating anything that anyone's allergic to, and maybe milk will work for us. And if not, then we'll be able to use the skim milk for the pigs, and possibly sell cream or feed it to the dogs or something.
Absolutely. Okay, so what's next on the line?
So then next we added baby doll sheep, so we try to use rotational grazing, and our cow goes around first, and she eats down primarily grass, and then after we move her on, we move the sheep in, and they primarily eat they call it forbs, or basically like weeds, different whatever she's left behind. So they complement each other in making sure that the area gets completely mowed. And they are an old heritage breed that they're very like docile and friendly, and they're not very tall. So they're about 24 inches max, so they don't challenge fences. we actually have them in an electric net that we don't even turn on because they really don't care to get out. They're just happy to stay wherever you put them, and they love to be, petted. And but even though they're short, they have stocky bodies, and they're good for meat. So that's the long-term plan for them as well.
Okay. Anything else?
We also got 2 American guinea hog gilts this year, and we're using them to finish clearing the areas of the garden. We had the spot we had initially put the chickens in. We ended up deciding to go, I think it was maybe about 2,000 square feet, and now we're expanding it out. We're going to do more like 3,000 square feet for the garden this year, so they're finishing that for us. And then next we're going to move them on to some wooded areas. And after they've cleared out all the wild brush that's under there, we're going to try and plant things like edible ferns and get some mushrooms going and things like that.
Nice. Okay. If you can make one statement that would impact this world on a positive note, what would that statement be?
Something to impact the world in a positive way. So I was just thinking about how we started off down this path just wanting to be more healthy. Like, as we got into our mid-20s, we were starting to have that like creep up of little weight gain, and I had migraines and, just little things. And we realized that we could really control what we chose to eat and, our relationship with the outdoors and the sun and how we move our bodies, and that we can really rely on ourselves in order to be as healthy as possible. And over time, I feel like we've realized that as we've cared for ourselves, we've seen that then extends to caring for the animals the best way you possibly can, and caring for the land the best way you possibly can. And it really just is like a, upward spiral, basically. It feels really good.
Okay. So would you have a statement, a quoted statement to the world?
Believe that you have the power to design your own life.
Perfect. Very good. So where do you see your homestead in the next 5 years?
We'll be beyond year 7 at that point, which year 7 seems to be kind of when everything comes together. We're on, this is our 4th year now. And so at that point, we will be more in maintenance and harvest mode rather than setting up mode. And we're going to have, the fruit trees should all be bearing by then. The herd, all of our mini cattle and our sheep should be more established, so that we are getting calves and lambs each spring. So it will kind of be more of keeping the systems going rather than all this upfront work that we've been kind of putting into it right now. And so we hope at that point that we will be basically providing all of our food for our family that can be grown where we live, and then have plenty of extra to share as well.
Right. It's a good place to be. Yeah. We put a lot of work into setting everything up and hoping for that 5-year mark that you can finally say structures are in place, trees and perennials are planted, animals are in place. So let's start reaping now what we've sowed. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So if you can sum up, we're getting ready to wrap up now. If you can sum up in one word what your experience has been thus far homesteading, what would that word be?
This was tough for me, and I think I settled on engaging. And what I meant by that was we're engaging with everything around us instead of just kind of moving through, without thinking things through so clearly. That when you have animals out there, you're really making sure that their well-being is taken care of. When you're living in an RV, you're really paying attention to the weather. Is there going to be enough sun for us to do what we want to do with our electric? And how's our rain, how much rain do we have collected left to use? And so we just really kind of deeply engaged with everything around us, and kind of establishing and understanding all the connections of everything that we've got going on.
Very nicely said. Sarah, thank you so much for taking your time and spending your time and your story with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was really nice talking to you.
Have a great day.
You too.